The luxury residential market is evolving, but are you ready for what's next? ThinkLab has just launched our Lux Residential Research Initiative. Now, what interests us about this sector is that when times are good, this sector spends. When times aren't, the luxury sector still spends. However, there's little research out there to define what luxury means today, how it's evolving, and how brands need to engage differently in this sector. So, at ThinkLab, we're creating it. The insights will be ready by November 2025. But don't worry, there's still time to sponsor and shape this research. Simply reach out to me, Amanda Schneider, for more information. Are you curious about the future of business, brand, and the built environment? Today, we dive into what Gen Alpha is already teaching us and why the most future-ready leaders are listening now. Welcome to Design Nerds Anonymous, the podcast that sparks curiosity at the intersection of business and design. I'm your host, Amanda Schneider, founder and president at ThinkLab, and speaker, now featured on TED.com. In this episode, we're talking about the future of life, from the spaces we design to the technologies we trust, with two powerhouses shaping what's next. Dani Mariano is the CEO of Razorfish, a marketing transformation agency at the forefront of data, digital experience, and the evolving consumer journey. She's also the author of the upcoming book, The Alpha Revolution, diving deep into how Gen Alpha is already rewiring the way we think about brand, influence, and expectations. Joining her is Allison Stransky, Chief Marketing Officer at Samsung Electronics America, where she leads not just the brand, but also the innovation that connects our devices, our homes, and our lives. With a background at Google, L'Oreal, and Unilever, Allison brings a unique lens on how AI, wellness, and work are colliding, and what that means for the spaces we live in. She also brings sharp insight into what future consumers will expect from brands, and how those expectations might transform the homes, workplaces, and communities we design. Together, they help us see around the corner of what's to come, from anticipatory smart homes and wearable health tech to why Gen Alpha might just be the most hopeful generation yet. So to set the tone, we asked each guest to introduce themselves and capture the future in one word. You're going to love the words they picked. Here's Dani.
The one word I would say that describes the future for me is hopeful. I think this generation is going to be tremendous. I think they are growing up at a time that is really difficult for any other generation to understand because of they're born with technology in their hands, but they also have a voice. I'm Dani Mariano. I'm the CEO of Razorfish. We are a marketing transformation agency, and we really focus on understanding people and how to bring technology and marketing together to meet the needs of consumers. The one group we are really fascinated about right now is Gen Alpha. So they are turning 13 this year. They are a generation we've never seen before. And we work with our clients like Allison to really help them see around the corner of what's coming next, especially right now in this fast-paced technology innovation cycle that we're in.
I love to hear a positive word. We've done a lot of research on Gen Z, of course, who is now in the workforce, now officially 18%, but projected to be as much as 27% by the end of next year. It's driving a lot of negative conversations on the workplace side. So I love that you started us off with a positive word about this next generation to follow. But Allison, introduce yourself. And if you had to pick one word to describe the future, what would that be?
Hi, Amanda. Thank you so much for having me. I am Allison Stransky. I'm the CMO of Samsung Electronics America, and I am so excited to join you and Dani today to talk about Gen Alpha because we're thrilled to see what this next generation is going to do for all of us. For a little bit more on my role, my team, a really special seat within Samsung. We are the corporate marketing team, so we're responsible for the Samsung brand, but we also have the big data team, the citizenship team, the corporate communications team, and the Connected Experience Center within my org. And that is a team who is responsible for the future of how all of our devices are going to work together and how our vision of one Samsung better together and enhanced by AI is going to come to life. When I think about Gen Alpha, the word that comes to mind is harmonized. I'm also really optimistic and excited because we really believe that technology, people, the planet, we're going to move into this place where we all work together so much more seamlessly, that we believe in tech for good and tech that is going to make not just our consumers' lives better, but the whole world a better place.
Another positive word that makes my heart so happy. Hopeful and harmonized, which I think, especially in this divisive era that we're in, maybe it means Gen Alpha is going to bring some great hope. So hopefully that's inspiring for our listeners as well. We're just getting started. A quick pause for this short break, and we'll be right back.
You cannot separate the human experience from all of the lived experiences that take place inside spaces. You simply can't. When the planet thrives, we thrive. And when we're making informed and smart choices that are future-focused and human-centric, we're doing good things for humanity and for the planet. I love supporting the DNA podcast because it is literally right on the leading edge of understanding the future and being curious about where this industry is headed, but also where humanity is headed. That's a driving thought process for Mannington as well. Mannington Commercial is a curious organization. We seek to understand. This is Cindy Kaufman. I'm Vice President of Marketing with Mannington Commercial, and we are a very proud sponsor of the DNA podcast. We would love to connect with you, and if you don't know who your rep is, we hope you'll come find that person on manningtoncommercial.com.
All right, let's get back into it. I want to move quickly into stats. I'm a data nerd, a design nerd, and you both were invited here because we came across some research from Razorfish that really interested us, and Dani included Allison, which we're thrilled to have both of you. But I'd love to start with Razorfish's data. So Dani, maybe you want to pick one or two of those that were really inspiring to you as we look towards this hopeful, harmonized future. Tell us about those stats and why you think they are surprising or revealing that relates to how we're going to look at the future of homes.
Yeah, so we at Razorfish have commissioned 3 waves of proprietary research. We are surveying from a 60,000 person panel globally, and we're looking at not just Gen Alpha, but also speaking with their parents. So we're doing this in the spirit of understanding this generation. Just to be clear, we're not trying to market to kids, but we are trying to understand them because I do think they are going to fundamentally change a lot of things that marketers have to be ready for, especially companies like Samsung. They're working on huge roadmaps and they're way ahead of the curve. So I love working with them as a partner. But if you're somebody who's doing product development, it's really important, especially like in the build space, you're thinking about what are these kids going to want when they turn 18, 25, 30. And so one of the things that has struck me in the research is what the table stakes are for them in terms of brands and their experiences. When we asked Gen Alpha who their preferred brands are today, we get results like Nike, like Samsung, like Amazon, Netflix. When we look at Gen Z 10 years ago, when they were about the same age, they were talking about cookie brands and cereal brands. And so the maturity of the brands that these kids are interacting with are so sophisticated. And the experiences that these brands create online and offline are very sophisticated. And so as Gen Alphas are forming their opinions at a very young age about what is normal, 2-hour delivery from Amazon, that's normal. For Gen Z and up, that's still pretty novel, right? That's still pretty exciting that could happen. For these kids, it's duh. Of course I can get something in 2 hours. And so I think when they are learning about the household, when they are going to home improvement stores, when they're thinking about appliance brands, furniture, et cetera, we also see in the data that 71% of parents of alphas are saying that their children have a more mature understanding and knowledge of those brands than they did at their same age. So we have a lot of data points pointing to how mature these kids are in terms of their brand experiences and their life experiences. If I'm not going on too long, because I'm also a data nerd, their access to technology is unmatched. So by age 13, Gen Alpha has as many devices as adults do, with 90% owning smartphones. I don't think that's a surprise if you're around kids. 73% have laptops, 69% have gaming consoles, 64% have tablets, and 33% have smartwatches. So that's a full range of technology. And I'm sure Allison will talk about this because she and I geek out about this all the time, about how seamlessly they move between all of those. But what we're also seeing in the research is that in real life is really important to these kids. And I don't know if that's because of the pandemic effect or that they're just craving in-person experiences. So when I think about the community that we're talking to today about what are we going to be doing about building homes and buildings and schools and different environments, how do we balance technology and the fact that they're using all this technology and have expectations, but also create spaces for them to gather where they're enabled by the technology. And they're super influential in the buying series. So they want to be part of designing the house of the future today.
I think that's so interesting. And this idea of in real life and digital and the integration of those two has come up very heavily in our research. We've done a ton of research on Gen Z. And I would say that's one of the most shocking things is how blind they are to those two separate components. To most of us that grew up in the physical world first, where the digital came second, those are two separate things. But when we talk to these younger generations, it's really blurred. And Allison, I'm sure you're going to bring us some stats that really dive even deeper into this as we look at how many devices and just how that's happening in homes.
So we're really interested in understanding the relationship, not just with technology, but then AI in particular. So that's where we're leaning in to see where the future is going to take us, because we're also looking at who's going to ultimately become an AI native generation, not just digital, not just tech, et cetera. So a couple of things that we find really interesting. Some of our research is, to be frank, a little bit more Gen Z leaning because we're Samsung. We're marketing to some of these consumers today while we are curious about learning about Alpha for the future because they are where we will be going next. But one thing that I found fascinating is that 86% of Gen Z say that technology is essential to their lives, which, as you were explaining how fluid everyone is, I think that last 14% doesn't even think about it because it's so fluid. Or Alpha is going to be the first 100%. It could go in either direction because it is just completely ubiquitous. It is so integrated. And now here comes the AI conversation. So more than 60% believe that AI is going to help with daily tasks and making everything better, but they're also questioning it right now. They don't see the current tools as either being ready or enough because they are so future looking and mature in a lot of these areas. So they're saying AI is coming. I really believe in AI, but it's going to get better than this. And I think their version of going to get better is also a little bit optimistic and accepting and welcoming as well.
I'm very curious about the AI conversation, especially as it relates to the built environment. I think this is a real challenge that we're having in translating that. How is that going to shift what we know and what we build? We know that the world is shifting fast from AI, from all of these generations that we're talking about, climate change, expectations for work, integrations with healthcare. Like we could talk about all the different vertical markets are all really evolving in real time. But our built environment, the things that we physically live in the real world, can't pivot overnight. It's long-term, often expensive to make changes, but it has to keep pace with these changing demands. So Allison, I want to start with you. Given everything you're seeing in your work, especially this AI conversation, how do you think some of these shifts might show up in the built environment, specifically around homes?
We're thinking about two things in particular. One, you need to design for adaptability because things are moving so much faster now and will probably continue to accelerate. So there are the things that you cannot change. The walls are harder to move, not impossible either. But the things within those spaces, that's where we would need to see much more fluidity between your home. Let's also go back to COVID, how much that changed everybody's environment. Your home is not just where you sleep and entertain and eat. You do everything in your home. But I think this is going to be a very native concept to alpha. So that needs to continue. So that's the adaptability that we see. And then we also primarily think about it through the tech lens. Tech needs to completely disappear into this environment, and the experience needs to trump the tech itself. So as AI is becoming more prevalent, we know it's going to become even more personal, even more predictive, and it's going to move beyond automation to become much more anticipatory and multimodal. And so what all of that means is you're not going to have to think about or ask your tech to do these things for you. It's going to adapt your environment around you. It's going to make meal planning suggestions before you even ask the question, by reading what's in your refrigerator, knowing your family's diet and your habits, and then presenting you with ideas. And that's just going to become so completely natural that you're not even going to think about the days of when you had to hand write out a shopping list. It's just all going to be around you. So we are getting really excited about that. We're seeing little bits of it today, but this is another area that I think is going to be accelerating pretty quickly as well. And in the innovation that we have coming, a lot of these very futuristic experiences are there now, but this is almost the 1.0 generation of what AI on your devices is going to be doing, because here it comes to accelerate and improve life.
As we think about sharing your information, we had Phil Kirshner and a gentleman from Microsoft, Matthew Marzinski, talking about the workplace and AI and sharing a lot of your information to better connect and better align your workday with your home life. But there's still a lot of hesitation about giving up your information. Allison, I'd love to ask, do you have any insight on that fear in the home? I feel like with Alexa, somebody's always listening. Maybe we already aren't afraid of that. Are you seeing the same hesitation?
Everyone has a different and personal take on what they are comfortable with. So to us, privacy is also paramount. Within all of our devices, it's completely customizable. So you want to save it only on the device so that it's not uploaded into the cloud. You have that choice. You want it used just for you and not in the greater marketing space. You have that choice. So I would say more than anything else, we are aware of the way people feel, and we give you the option to make sure that you are comfortable with how your data is being used. But data is also, it's this great currency, because even when it does exist on your device, rather in the greater sphere, your device is going to become much more helpful to you. And we really believe in getting to that end benefit of adding value, adding helpfulness to your life. Like we really do, back to all the positivity, we're doing this to help every consumer achieve that personalized, customized, better home life experience.
Allison, can you talk at all about some of the things you guys launched at CES around Knox and creating blockchains at the home level? Because I think as that becomes more and more ubiquitous, that starts to work against this privacy question of how you protect the data within your home versus data in the world.
Yes, exactly. So what Dani was alluding to is the Knox matrix. So with all of your Samsung products, when they work together, they actually create this matrix of protecting your data even more. So it is blocking out bad actors, but also to that point, fully customizable. You build your own matrix. And the idea here is everything is connected. You're logged in your refrigerator and your TV. So protection is becoming even more important, because when your fridge just plugged into the wall and that was the end of it, what was going to happen other than an electricity fail? Now, to get to all of this helpfulness and all of these higher order benefits, the devices have become more connected. They're Wi-Fi and Bluetooth enabled and all of those things. But that is where the Knox matrix comes in to keep you even more protected, the more devices that are working together.
It's got such a great name too.
It does. Yeah. That sounds like Fort Knox, right? Like it sounds very secure, very secure.
Yeah. But what I love about it is, as we think about designing for the future, what I like a lot about what Allison's talking about, it's all about the use cases and understanding what people are going to want in their home. And what we see in the Gen Alpha research is they don't distinguish between in real life and being online, as you both were describing. They're just being. They don't change their persona in the online world. Gen Z feels more like themselves in the online world because they express themselves in a way that they don't feel comfortable doing in real life. But Gen Alpha is not reporting that same dynamic. They're themselves wherever they are. And in some of our early focus groups, it was fascinating to see how they talked about the different devices, which is a use case. Like you could move easily from the car to the house, from their phone to the tablet to the TV. And for them, it just makes sense. Like it's hard for them even to express, but they can tell you when they use each device and why. And the use cases are different depending on if they're alone or with groups. And so for me, when I think about this conversation, it's really about what are those use cases going to be? I love the idea of technology just disappearing because it just is. It's just like electricity. Of course, it's there, but it's not front and center. And I think that's a big difference for Gen Alpha versus Gen Z. And that Gen Z understands screens. My kids are Gen Z. So they remember cable TV, not when there was all this streaming going on. They remember a remote control. Instead of today, you can basically talk to your remote. You don't have to fuss through the channels and go through a guide and all of that kind of stuff. Just the experiences are so different. And I think if we focus on how do people and how do kids want to experience the world, they're so empowered. They want to see something online and then immediately do it in the kitchen or do the experiment or go down to Sephora and experience the beauty products. And I think when we talk about the home, we want to facilitate those kinds of interactions. And the security, of course, is important. We know privacy from some of our other research is top of mind for American consumers. The ways that we can start to think about protecting the home. And I think the Knox matrix is one of those where it starts to make sense.
We'll be right back after this short break.
I'm probably not alone or isolated in feeling that right now there's so much that we could choose to worry about and things feel really uncertain. What I find is that when we think about and spend time imagining the future, it can actually calm some of those fears. It can actually do something. What we're trying to do is catalyze action. So when you see and feel and can touch the future in your mind, it inspires you to want to do something today to shape it. That's the entire point. Spending time thinking and discussing gives us the opportunity to shape that better future that we're all hoping for. I'm Kaylin Reed, Applied Insight Strategist, Certified Futurist, and host of the Alternative Design Podcast. We started alternative design as a beacon of hope for our industry at a time when the world was no longer business as usual. At Kimball International, the future isn't something that we wait for. We search for it.
Thanks for sticking with us. Now, let's return to the ideas shaping the future. One of the interesting things to me is I read this study that was talking about marketing to pet owners. But as you talk about the influence of Gen Alpha, especially as we've got some research happening later this year in the luxury residential sector. So especially as you look at homes, what this research on pet owners talks about is you're not actually designing the dog toy for the dog. You're designing it for the pet owner that thinks the dog will enjoy it. And I feel like maybe we have a little bit of that happening here where the parents are still probably making those decisions, but especially in the luxury sector, they're probably going to make decisions based on the behavior of their children, which I think will have implications on this physical environment. So back to just this question around how it's going to change our physical environment. I heard it's got to be ubiquitous and it has to physically disappear. Allison, you used the word adaptable. Any other thoughts on the physical environment as we think of these designers really trying to create these homes that are comfortable for these multi-generational families living in them? Any other advice to those trying to build spaces today that can still serve us tomorrow?
I think a lot about places to gather where technology is part of the experience or can support the experience, and thinking about how they're using the technology. Do you need a big screen in that space that can fade into the background when it's not being used versus being front and center? The other piece that I think about a lot, having just redone my house, is the wiring. You can't move the walls as easily when you upgrade a 1950s bungalow in Los Angeles, you don't have enough power in your switch box to have a modern kitchen and all the gadgets that we run in our household in every room. So spent a lot of money on making sure that I had the right power situation. And I think that's setting up that infrastructure for adaptability and thinking even probably 10, 15, 20 years from now. It's a little bit difficult at the speed that we're going, but some of that base information of how do you make sure the house can even handle the power needs that we're going to be looking for. And I'm sure there's a ton of more qualified people than I am to talk about sustainability and other types of power sources. I do think these kids will care a lot about the environment.
To add to that, we've been trying to elevate how we think about space into the higher order benefits that you're ultimately looking for. We think about it in terms of health, care for yourself and others, which we actually include. We're looking at multi-generational families. We're also looking at pet parents because pets are just as important in your family. So I loved that you brought that up. Productivity, entertainment, and sustainability as big landmark areas that we're looking to build use cases and solutions for. So health is obviously a huge, ripe area for a lot of innovation because we look at health as fitness, but there's eating, there's sleep, and sleep is actually something that we're very tuned into because we've got a lot of research about, on the whole, none of us really get enough sleep. So we're really focused on how you can create better sleeping environments. We've been thinking about those big areas and designing for that because that's where it connects together with, in our case, your Samsung products, but also in third-party products, which you can put together through the SmartThings app and create routines where in the morning when you wake up, your lights and your curtains can open to bring natural light into your eyes, or bedtime, you can adjust down in the other direction while your smartwatch is giving you tips to get a better night's sleep. So all of this working holistically ladders up to a bigger place that we see a future where your home and your life helps you live healthier as well.
I'm very curious if that integrates work in there at all. I was just at a workplace conference last week. They had a presentation about key cards because they were talking about the smart homes and you have all these connected devices. And then when you get to the office, they literally hand you a piece of plastic that you have to hold on to. And Gen Z was pushing back on that. Like, this is ridiculous. But Allison, I love that you brought in healthcare and holistic wellness. I'm curious if your approach has shifted post-COVID as more people are working from their homes.
We are focused, we call it productivity, but it is an area that we're looking at as well because you do need that seamless transition interoperability. We all know you come home, you pop your laptop back up for a little bit, finish something else. It's just all become, what is the 9 to 5? It's interesting that you go to work because we've done a little bit of research with Alpha as well on how they see the future of work. At Samsung, we run a program called Solve for Tomorrow, and it's a STEM-based competition where students in 6th through 12th grade use STEM to solve a problem in their community. We just completed our 15th year. The stuff that we have seen them do year on year in this program, it's just incredible. Talk about why I'm optimistic for the future. We have seen empathy. We have seen AI be introduced. We have seen tech solutions that surpass where I am right now. And these are high schoolers. But they also have reported to us that they see a very different work future. They're much more fluid and not attached to their desks. They're also, the thing that stands out to me, leaned into being entrepreneurs. That's what they see for themselves as, I don't need to work for a big guy. I'm going to go create something myself.
I love that for them. And I love that for the future of our world. Right now, I'm working on a book about what's broken about work. I just did a TED Talk titled Work is Broken. Gen Z can help us fix it. I think it really dives into a lot of those conversations and where I hope they go.
Yeah, what I think is going to be interesting to see about Gen Alpha and work is their earliest school memories are going to be from going to school online. And yet we see in the research that for learning, they actually want to be in real life with their peers and with people that they really trust and believe in. So it's an interesting dynamic of being very savvy with the technology, but also craving in real life experiences.
And I think that's a great transition to ask this next question. What is one idea or insight that's recently changed the way you think about the future?
I'll go first. What's been really interesting to think about is agentic AI. And, at Razorfish, we are always on the forefront of thinking about technology and how consumers will use it, but also what are new use cases. And so when I think about how Gen Alpha uses technology so seamlessly, and I was thinking about what does the home of the future look like? And then I think about agentic AI, and then robots are coming. I started to think about, are there going to be agentic home managers? How great would it be to have the smart technology not only recognize that my air conditioner needs to be serviced because it's coming into summertime, but also just going ahead and making the appointment and paying for everything. And I don't know, the robot could welcome the people and let them into the backyard to deal with the air conditioner. That's just a very different way of living. I don't know if we'll be ready to hand the keys over to AI, literally, to make sure that our house is running, but it becomes a very different relationship with your home and how you take care of it and the labor that goes into pride of ownership versus enjoying your home.
That's fascinating. There was a recent talk on TED Talks Daily about taking some of the mental load off of working moms and how there's a lot of negative press around AI. And one of the positives is how do we look at the things that we don't want to do or we don't have time to do? And I love the thought of agentic AI taking off some of that mental load.
I love that example because we do have a lot of faith in how much more helpful all of these things are going to be with the examples that Dani said. But to add to that, I'm really optimistic about how the power of Gen Alpha growing up empathetic and living in this whole space right now, because back to our Solve for Tomorrow examples that we were giving, in the last 15 years, the competition has yielded recommendations that are so far and beyond above where they started. So in early years, they were measuring pH and water quality in local streams and putting on waders and doing what many of us thought of as science. But now, this year's winners, two of them incorporated AI into their recommendations. One was an oral cancer screening app, so that you just take a picture in your mouth and AI is playing the first run of doctor and saying that looks like a canker sore. No, that looks cancerous, which is just amazing. But what it represents to me is that if you're thinking that way as a high schooler, where are you going?
That's amazing. And Dani and I were talking a little bit about some other examples. And one of the things that she mentioned was, I think, a watch that measures your antioxidants. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes. So we just announced our Samsung Galaxy Watch 8, which is the latest innovation in our wearables. And, wearables have come a long way. This is another one where I think we're going to continue to see the future and innovation in this space as our relationship with our devices continues to change. In the previous iterations, they'd gotten better and better, but now the next version is measuring your antioxidant level so that you can now get nutritional recommendations. It was already measuring your movement. It was already measuring your sleep, but now it's going to come to you and say, we're going to suggest you incorporate some vegetables in this next meal because this is really the whole holistic future that we need to get to. And our expectation is that if we make it easier on you, you're going to want to do it. You don't have to think about it. Just go down to the cafeteria and turn to the salad bar instead. It's there. We just want to provide a little bit of encouragement and technology that's been personalized to you.
Yeah. The theme of customization is so important to Gen Alpha and to Gen Z as well. But the idea that you can have everything really tailored to you personally and what's going on in your skin, what's going in your refrigerator, what's happening in your household, and even just in your environment, I think is like a whole different way of living that for me personally, I'm like pretty excited to see what that's like. I was preparing for this podcast and I remembered going to the Microsoft House of the Future back in it's probably 2001, 2002. And it was just amazing on their campus. And it was like, we're going to have TV on demand. We're going to have things streaming. I was like, I cannot wait for this. I was so pumped about that. And a lot of the things that were in that house, we actually have today, where you can see in the refrigerator what ingredients you have. You can Google, you can take a picture and say, what can I make with all of these ingredients? That's what they had back 25 years ago. it's come to fruition. Like we have that kind of a lifestyle now. At Razorfish, one of the things we try to do is help our clients see around the bend. Gen Z, a lot of our clients were surprised and taken off guard. They thought they were going to be mini millennials. And we want to advise our clients on understanding Gen Alpha, which is great about this podcast, especially when you're designing for the future. You have to be thinking about them today because Gen Alpha, it's a mistake to think of them as mini Gen Z. They are going to rewire everything. And like I said at the beginning, I'm hopeful because I think they're going to do great things.
I think that's really interesting as we think about the future, because I think some older generations maybe are more willing to accept this is just the way things are versus some of these younger generations and this shift in perspective. You might see them as narcissistic, but maybe we all should be looking at what we really want, what we really need, especially as Allison connects it to some of these health pieces. I want to start to wrap us here because I know we're getting tight on time. Fast forward to 2040. What is one radical possibility that you can imagine for the future? Maybe it feels wild right now, but it could actually happen.
I will put my bet in the continued evolution of wearables, but I'm not going to tell you what it is in 2040 because I don't know yet. But I think wearables represent the more seamless integration. I wear my Galaxy Ring, and right now, one of the things that it can do is, and this is just my ring, there's no screen on this, can measure my temperature and can tell if my temperature is running too hot and adjust my thermostat in the middle of the night as needed. So if that is today, I think we are on an evolution of the wearables that we know today are going to continue to be more helpful. Antioxidants reading on your watch is 2025. In 2040, I think this is going to help create a much more seamless, continuously ubiquitous, driven by AI, more helpful for your needs. So I'm putting my bets on wearables, but I'm also hoping that I have a robot to do my dishes.
And laundry. Let's throw laundry in there
Laundry.
too, please. Dani, what would you say?
I was going to go robots, but we spend a lot of time thinking about AR and VR at Razorfish. And for me, a big part of that is the hardware is the challenge. I don't think headsets where you are blocking out the world will really become where we live in the future. There's too much interest and craving for real life interaction for us all to be living in a metaverse through goggles that block out all sorts of light. But I am thinking about as we get into glass formats and things that are lighter that allow you to interact in the world but enhance that experience. I think that will be really interesting to watch what those use cases are. I always want a pair of glasses that can tell me and remind me of names because I can recognize the face. I can't always remember the name. My team tells me there might be some privacy issues there, but I think that would be like a great use case for me, just making sure that there's meaningful ways to use the technology to enhance that like seamless experience where tech is in the background, but it's enabling us to see the world in different ways.
And as we wrap, Dani, I also want to invite you to share a little bit about you're working on a book.
Yeah.
You've got some fascinating new research. Can you tell us a little bit about that, when it's going to be out, and maybe how our listeners can follow you if they want to hear it when it first comes out?
Yeah, thank you so much for asking. The book is going to be called The Alpha Revolution. It's about how Gen Alpha is defying expectations and rewiring marketing. So it's a marketing book really aimed at CMOs, CEOs, the C-suite, and thinking about this generation as they get closer and closer to turning 18, how they think differently about everything in the world and how that will fundamentally change marketing. It's not about how to market to kids, but it's really about what to expect from this generation and how to start thinking about it now. Everything from product roadmaps to how you think about the marketing funnel, how you use creator strategies and influencer strategies, and where we anticipate that to be going. We're publishing with Ben Bella in April of 2026, and you can't actually pre-order it now. It's on Amazon. Probably the best way to follow is either through razorfish.com or I'm Dani Mariano on LinkedIn.
Wonderful. Allison, anything you want to close out with?
I will just close by saying, I hope you can feel our enthusiasm and excitement. We are so proud of where tech is going and really truly believe that tech is going to be integral in improving everyone's lives. We were talking about health, the family care, the pet care, the productivity. The uses are endless. And it is a privilege to be a part of the Samsung Electronics business. I appreciate the opportunity to share what we're doing with a wider audience.
If you've made it this far, thank you, truly. My hope is that something you heard today will stick with you and maybe even shift the way you see what's ahead. I do have one small ask before you go. If this conversation resonated with you in any way, please follow the show. Better yet, leave a review. It may seem like a small action, but it's how these ideas reach more and more people who care about shaping the future. So thanks for listening. I'm really glad you're here. Design Nerds Anonymous is a proud member of the Surround Podcast Network. Special thanks to the podcast production team, Hannah Vitti, Rachel Senator, and Rob Schulte.